there's been a low-level pogrom in Britain for a whole year. And of course, the anti-racists of the left, the so-called anti-racists, haven't said anything whatsoever because they don't give a damn about Jews. And in fact, they think Jews are enjoy white privilege. So why would they ever talk about the racial persecution of Jews? Jews have been utterly abandoned by the so-called anti-racists of the left and the liberal elite. It is genuinely sickening. And we're seeing it now again in response to the Amsterdam pogrom.
Now, look, breaking right now, outrage at the British bashing corporation, the BBC, over their coverage of an appalling pogrom in Amsterdam overnight. So, this was their headline of the incident. Israel sends rescue planes after clashes in Amsterdam. Now, as Robert Jenrick, who is now the Shadow Justice Secretary in the British Conservative Party, said, these weren't clashes, it was a modern-day pogrom. And another warning to the West about the consequences of mass migration and failed integration. Wake up before it's too late. Now, King Willem-Alexander of the Netherlands has already expressed deep horror and shock over last night's attack on Israelis. It followed a football match in the Dutch city, but it's utterly appalling to see the way that the British MSM, even some non-usual suspects, are so desperate to turn the story. I mean, take a look at this Daily Mail headline, for example. Israel football hooligans tear down Palestine flags in Amsterdam as taxi drivers fight back in night of chaos. Now, let me tell you, I have looked at the footage of what happened last night. It was utterly appalling. It was pro-Hamas violence targeted directly at Israelis. I can't show you a lot of it, but I will just give you a couple of little tasters. Have a look at this. And the Jewish comedian Josh Howie was utterly outraged by the BBC's coverage, writing, clashes, no BBC News, Jews being hunted down, run over, beaten, and some missing in a premeditated attack by mobs of masked racists is not clashes, it's a pogrom. You utterly disgust me. And Brendan O'Neill, you are, of course, author of the new book, After the Pogrom. There is serious concerns that the types of scenes that we saw in Amsterdam last night, which are truly sickening, are about to come to the UK.
You know, in a way, they already have. You know, over the past year, since 7th of October 2023, when Hamas launched its pogrom in Israel, we've seen numerous acts of anti-Semitic violence in Britain. Synagogues have been graffitied, synagogues have been surrounded by so-called pro-Palestine protesters. A Jewish kid was pelted with stones on his way to synagogue. Kids at the Jewish Free School in North London were told that they could take off their blazers on the way to and from school in case any anti-Semites spotted them. So there's been a low-level pogrom in Britain for a whole year. And of course, the anti-racists of the left, the so-called anti-racists, haven't said anything whatsoever because they don't give a damn about Jews. And in fact, they think Jews are enjoy white privilege. So why would they ever talk about the racial persecution of Jews? Jews have been utterly abandoned by the so-called anti-racists of the left and the liberal elite. It is genuinely sickening. And we're seeing it now again in response to the Amsterdam pogrom. This is an event that it did start off kind of as clashes, the kind of thing you see at football matches all the time, with one set of fans chanting this and another set of fans chanting that. But after the match, this was a match between Maccabi Tel Aviv, the Israeli team, and Ajax, the Dutch team. After the match, it took a very dark turn. It became a modern day Jew hunt. And what happened is that mobs of people, and it seems, although this will need to be investigated and confirmed, it seems that a lot of these mobs were people of Arab origin and possibly recent immigrants. That needs to be determined. They chased after supporters of the Maccabees. They demanded to see their passports to check that they were Israelis, and therefore they would be they would get a good kicking if they were Israelis. We saw Jews being kicked in the head, knocked unconscious. Some of them leapt into canals to avoid the blows of their persecutors. Some had to take refuge in hotels. And, we saw this situation. There was one clip I saw which made me feel genuinely nauseous. It was this young man from Israel who was denying that he was Israeli, denying that he was a Jew, because he was really desperate to avoid being beaten to a pulp. So we have a situation in Europe in 2024 where Jews are denying their Jewishness in order to avoid being battered by mobs of anti-Semites. And the inability of the British media and the European media more broadly, and the left in particular, to take that seriously and to recognize how awful that is, I think that's a real indictment of all of those people.
But first, though, hot flashes, sleepless nights, weight gain, joint pain. I know a lot of you are dealing with or have dealt with these symptoms, especially the women in the Outspoken family. Now, obviously, I haven't experienced menopause firsthand for obvious reasons, but I have heard firsthand from so many of you about the challenges that come with it. So I'm coming to you with good news, I hope, because by now most of you will have heard me talk about Verso. I've been taking their products for months, and it's been absolutely transformative for me. But today I want to focus on all you amazing women out there, especially those dealing with menopause or perimenopause. I've heard from so many of you about how tough this phase of life can be. Well, Salbean by Verso is designed to target those symptoms head on by addressing the root cause. It's formulated with ingredients that are proven to increase NAD+ levels in the body. That's huge, by the way, because NAD+ is what keeps your cells healthy and energized, but it drops off as we age and especially during menopause. Here's the thing. Boosting NAD+ can make a big difference in how you feel. Women who've taken Salbean are reporting some pretty amazing changes: hot flashes disappearing, more energy, joint pain relief, weight loss, and mental clarity. I've even heard from some listeners who've told me their periods have come back or have become regulated, and they feel like they've turned back the clock on aging. Now, the ingredients in Salbean have shown to balance hormones without going the traditional hormone therapy route. It also helps with inflammation and metabolism, which is especially helpful for managing weight and keeping you feeling your best. Plus, these research-backed ingredients have been shown to improve bone health, which is crucial for postmenopausal women at risk of osteoporosis. Now, what I love about Salbean, and I think you will too, is that it doesn't just mask the symptoms of menopause, it tackles the root causes of aging, helping you feel stronger, healthier, and more energized from the inside out. So if you haven't tried it yet and you're ready to take control of your health and feel more like yourself, click the link in the description on YouTube or Rumble, or head on over to buy.ver.so online and use the coupon code OUTSPOKEN. You will save 15% on your first order. So if you're tired of the sleepless nights, the hot flashes, or just feeling off, give Salbean a try. It's already helped so many of you, and I'm confident it can help even more of you to feel better too. So to repeat, www.buy.ver.so/outspoken and use the coupon code OUTSPOKEN. And then this morning, rather than expressing shame, the pro-Hamas demonstrators were back on the streets of Amsterdam. Watch this.
Free Palestine! From the river to the sea, we'll never be defeated. The people united.
And Maya Tusi wrote on X about that. First they attack, then they celebrate, a tradition that goes back to the 7th century. So, Brendan O'Neill, why is it that the British mainstream media in these cases are always so desperate not to be seen as being on the side of Israelis?
It's such a good question. And the truth is that, I see that mob in Amsterdam as the armed wing of elitist hatred for Israel.
Mm.
This is the thing this is why they're so uncomfortable, I think, with the violence that took place in the Netherlands last night, because at some level they know that it springs from their own Israelophobia, because hating Israel has become positively fashionable in
Hmm.
Europe over the past year. People, all the virtuous literary cliques like Sally Rooney and others, they boycott Israel. They never go anywhere near things from Israel. They're poisonous, they're horrible. We've seen people on the streets of our cities referring to Israel as uniquely barbarous, the most deceitful nation in the world, the worst nation in the world. We've seen journalists like Owen Jones refer to Israel as a nation in the grip of genocidal mania, as if all the people of Israel are under the spell of savagery. So we've seen criticism of Israel crossed the line time and time and time again into bigotry against Israeli people. And so I think it's shocking that a mob in Amsterdam attacked Israelis, but it's not surprising because this is a continent on which it is fashionable to hate Israel. This is a continent on which the intellectual elites demonstrate their virtue through hating Israel. This is a continent on which it has become acceptable to say that Israel is evil and it lies and it's deceitful and it's psychotic and it's in the grip of genocidal savagery. It's not surprising on a continent like that some people would take that dinner party bigotry a step further and actually attack Israeli citizens. So there's a real mashing, I think, together of the elitist prejudices against Israel and sometimes against Jews themselves, and the way in which this kind of street violence plays out. And that's probably one of the reasons people are reluctant to talk about this. At some deep rooted level, they know that they bear some responsibility for this.
And was it that elitism that inspired you to write After the Pogrom, your new book?
Yeah, so I wrote this book because I just found myself getting increasingly frustrated and angry after 7th of October last year when I saw people, you mentioned there that people in Amsterdam took to the streets this morning and waved Palestine flags and were cheering and clapping, almost like they were celebrating the pogrom of last night. The same thing happened after 7th of October. What people forget is that on the 9th of October, around 36 hours after Hamas's pogrom, a crowd of people gathered outside the Israeli embassy in London before Israel had done anything. And they were dancing and singing and waving flags and letting off fireworks. It was a pro-pogrom celebration on the streets of London in October 2023. I say in the book, it would have been it would be like people had poured onto the streets of London to celebrate Kristallnacht or to celebrate any of the pogroms of the 1930s and the 1940s. It was that disgusting and that shocking. And it was those kinds of events in London, in New York, in Berlin, in Sydney, where people took to the streets to say, F the Jews, and they burnt the Israeli flag and they celebrated the murder and rape and kidnapping of more than 1,000 Jewish people. They celebrated it. It was when I saw all of that stuff that I thought to myself, the response to Hamas's attack on Israel is going to be really, really bad. And it's going to tell us a lot about the decline of civilizational values in our own societies. And that's really what drove me to write the book. The book is a reminder to people of all the awful things that happened in the West after the 7th of October. For example, journalists at Novara Media referring to it as a day of celebration, radical Islamists in Sydney saying that it was a wonderful day. I remind people of all the things that were said, and then I try to explain why people think like this, why they have such animus towards the Jewish nation and why they have such animus towards Western civilization itself. So I'm really trying to draw those things together and make the case for standing by Israel and standing by the values of Western civilization.
Absolutely brilliant book. After the Pogrom is out now. But Brendan O'Neill, stand by, because in just 1 minute, I want to talk about the two-tier policing going on here in the UK. Specifically, the difference between the way that Islamism now seems to be in police compared to the so-called far right.
Thank you so much for watching Dan Wootton Outspoken. Please click on my face just to the bottom left to subscribe to this brand new independent news source and turn on the notification bell so you'll be alerted to our brand new live shows, uncancelled interviews, and special royal episodes. Outspoken is also now available as a podcast, so you can listen to the show every weekday on the go, wherever you are.